For a Nigerian to be recognized, for their policy suggestions to be recognized, they have to go overseas and sit in a white. This hatred of the self essentially means we cannot invest in our own research institutions. We only believe in black people once white people have put a stamp on them. I'm a king. Yes. We need to heal from what we have done to ourselves and what others have done to us, so that we can, in self-belief and in self-confidence, through an understanding of our history, through mastery of economics, of science, and of technology, we need to create the Africa that we desire. To understand what I'm going to say, it's important for you to anchor it on 3 ideas. First idea is, what is it that they told us that we have internalized? So in Barbados, they passed a slave act which was required to justify the inhuman way in which they were going to treat all people who are black. That act in particular was the precursor to chattel enslavement of black people. It simply said, black people are not fully human. They are not human like us being white. That act was then replicated in Jamaica, replicated in Virginia, replicated all over the world. It was anchored on the white supremacist view that required, for its own affirmation and in order to assuage its own fragility, to construct this idea of a very inferior black race. Once you are inferior, you can be enslaved. Once you are inferior, you can be treated like property. Second idea was this idea in the Privy Council decision trying to determine ownership of land in what is now Zimbabwe. It was called Southern Rhodesia. In the decision of the Privy Council called In Re Southern Rhodesia in 1918, no black person was involved in that decision. They made judgment regarding the whole country, but the British judiciary ruled that whoever owns the land in Southern Rhodesia, one thing is clear, it is not the native, because the native has no sense of ownership. I need you to understand, first, you are not fully human. Second, you have no sense of ownership. Then there was the third component, which was called minimalism or miniaturization or juniorization or whatever you call it in the apartheid state. What the apartheid system held was these who are not fully human, who have no form of ownership. And by the way, as Professor and others will tell you, Hegel and others had said it this way, that the native is in everything except corruption and vice, an infant, a baby. So this juniorization did not just create you less than human, it did not create you with no sense of ownership, but it made you the perpetual province of the description of vice or corruption. And it is important to understand that we have incorporated in our own psyche. There was a fourth and last bit which said, because the native is all these things, they are not capable of thought. They are not capable of ideation. They are not capable of invention. So what we are struggling with is leadership or positional leadership that confirms through its behavior, that confirms through primitive accumulation, that confirms through some of the most stupid things that you ever see with people who have power, that the native is in everything but corruption, a baby, an infant, a toddler. Now the challenge of Pan-Africanism, we have institutions and resolutions, we have charters, we even have visions 2063 or 53, we even have agenda 20-something, we have everything, but until we vacate the premise of not treating each other and ourselves as fully human, not treating and believing that we are not infantile in matters of invention, in matters of ideation, in matters of creation. Just think about it. If you look in this room of many eminent persons, you ask them which primary school did you go to, which high school. As wealthy as we all look, I can see from your foreheads, you have a little bit of money. But as wealthy as you look, if I went back to your primary school and your high school, I would be scandalized by the state of dilapidation. So there is no sense of building, sustaining, whether it's building back or building forward. So I want to suggest that the challenge translates itself into 3 disconnects. Number 1, a fundamental disconnect between our politics and ideas. A disconnect between our power, or those in power, and our institutions of learning, of research. So for a Nigerian to be recognized, for their policy suggestions to be recognized, they have to go overseas and sit in a white. This hatred of the self essentially means we cannot invest in our own research institutions. We only believe in black people once white people have put a stamp on them. Second, a disconnect between ourselves and our ancestry and history of struggle and the young people and the future. Many of the leaders that you meet on the continent have no sense or no idea, no appetite to bring young people into the spaces of politics, spaces of business, spaces of innovation as a way of firewalling what they've built as legacies. There is a consistent attempt to use young people purely what others have called in leftist terms lumpenization. Young people with degrees roaming around the streets, young people highly educated, highly skilled, cannot be used within government or business. Why? Because we have no belief in our own children. So fundamentally, the problem we have is many of us here on the stage, we know a bit about technology, but the young people who can upgrade us, we'd rather not deal with them, and we want to go back to Cecil John Rhodes and the Mungo Park's great-grandchildren to get advice on how to run and govern our own people. Thank you.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king,